So I recently made a short film as a DOP, and it was exteriors. And if you know anything about North America, especially Vancouver, is we are in fall, so the sun goes down quite early, and the team for some reason were not really prepared for this. They had exterior shoots. Someone didn't check the weather. They didn't check what time the sun goes down, and this was a major concern of mine when I got booked for this gig because I was like, "Oh, do you want me to provide lights?" And we're shooting exterior. We'll need batteries because the sun goes down. They're like, "No, don't worry, we'll be done by 6." And then we showed up. We didn't start by 6, so but we still had to do the shoot because that was in the schedule. So the sun went away and things got interesting. So I always carry this light with me. This is a knockoff of the aperture light. Um, I carry it with me just in case I have to shoot something in the dark or some stuff, or I just feel some creativity. So this light came in clutch for us because this was the only source of light that I had, and we used phone flashes to try and capture something. Um, One of the things that I like about the Sony FX3 that we're mostly taught about is its dual native ISO, how you can shoot at 800 or at 12.8, 12,800 ISO. And one of the things because I'm in film school, my teacher always tells me is you don't want to use 12,800 because you mainly want to use it during um when your exterior and the sun is out, so that way you're pushing your highlights and you don't really lose. I don't know the science, but mainly what he told me was if you want to create contrast, if you want to have more shadows, you want to shoot at 800 ISO, not 12,800 ISO. And on this day I finally learned that lesson. What happened was, okay, we have to shoot, so we shifted the ISO to 12,800. We got perfect exposure, but the problem was I was losing shadows. So I could tell where the light was, but on their downside, there was no shadows. And the thing that happens is when you shoot at 12,800, what happens is your camera is essentially just pushing light into the shadows. So you're pushing light into the gain, you're pushing light into the offset, you're pushing light everywhere into your primaries. And what then happens is your blacks become muffled. So now you don't really have blacks. What you have essentially is light, and it's weird. So the challenge is if you're shooting exterior dark, right? So we can see that it's dark, but it's like there's no shadows. And that was a big problem. And we had to do it because there was no lights, in this situation. But the main thing that I took out of it, the main lesson that I learned from it was whenever you're shooting exterior darks, bring lights, man, because shooting at 12,800 ISO works in the day because when the sun is up and the highlights are going crazy, what you want is to maintain information in your highlights. You don't want to lose that information. So the higher you have, the more dynamic range you have, and then you can bring down stuff in post. And then what that helps is you don't lose information in your highlights, where whilst you're losing information in your blacks, right? So if you're shooting at 12,800 ISO at night, you're losing information in your blacks, and then you basically have a no contrast image. So this was a major thing for me that I had to learn the hard way, and I'm presenting this to you as well. Um, One of the main things that I think that you really need to have, is an idea of how much your contrast ratios that you like. I like 1/8 because I feel like that's more cinematic. Some people don't, it's up to them. But always consider that before you say, "Oh, I want to buy a Sony because it's great at low light." What does that mean? Well, for me, one of the main things that I took out of that day was, is filmmaking really art or is it science? And I feel like it's a mixture of both, but mostly science, because what you want to do, and this is something that I've been noticing as I'm driving around, is I look at how light acts. So if you're ever driving on a highway, try to look behind you, try to look how, especially where there are no streetlights, try to look at how with your LED lights on your car, whenever you press your brakes, for me in my car, when I look back, I don't see the red light. So I'm like, light doesn't work that way. You know, I remember in old cars before LED, when it was those bulbs, light would express itself more than what it does now. And when you look in your view mirror, if there's no light behind you, it's pure darkness. So I was like, yo, this is mad how you can think about lighting a scene in terms of scientifically. Like you can think of lighting scenes in a science way, because the way light operates, how light travels, how if I was to place this camera, is it like 6 feet away from me? That's a stop down, and how all those things matter, and how when you are thinking about lighting a scene. So let's say, for example, lighting this scene where I'm at right now. One of the challenges I have with the house that I'm in is it has reflective walls. So no matter how you light it, it's never the perfect lighting. You are constantly going to have issues. And how do you solve those things? You have to start thinking about, okay, so how does light act? Right now, I have the Amaran 100D coming in from over there, and then I have these newer lights where you can't really control them. They just spew everywhere, man. But I really wish I had them when I was shooting that exterior shot. And I really hope that you guys get one of these things. They always come in handy, especially when you're working with directors and people who are not really as technical as we tend to be.